power lines down across that area. We have some distribution gas lines, these are the smaller feeder lines that are inoperable and are leaking gas and perhaps contributing to some of these fires. We are calling every available serviceman in to work to restore the damage as quickly as possible. In some sections of the city, we're trying to restore power as we speak.
Thank you very much. Also on the telephone, we have Tom Mullins of the California Office of Emergency Services. Mr. Mullins, we have a report now of at least 58 persons dead. That comes from our affiliate KPIX in San Francisco. Our last CBS News count was 53. 58 dead from KPIX in San Francisco.
If you'd like to make a call.
I'm afraid that we may have lost our call to Tom Mullins of the California Office of Emergency Services. Let's see if he's still there. Mr. Mullins? I believe not. But our station, KPIX, our affiliated station in San Francisco, now believes that a conservative estimate is, their estimate, at least 58 persons dead. We know of 40 or more on the collapse of Highway 880 in Oakland. There in San Francisco and the surrounding area, there were 6 persons killed in the collapse of a building on some automobiles. 7 persons believed dead in the collapse of at least a portion of a shopping center in the Santa Cruz area, and 1 person at least killed in the collapse of a section of the San Francisco Bay Bridge. So our CBS News confirmed total of dead is at least 53. As I say, our affiliated station KPIX in San Francisco feels comfortable saying that they believe at least 58 persons are known to be dead. Helping us here this evening is Chris Scholes of Columbia University, a professor of geology and expert on earthquakes. The epicenter about 8 miles north of Santa Cruz, California, which is south of San Francisco. 7.0 on the open-ended Richter scale. At the epicenter, we do not know yet in which direction the main force of the earthquake went along the San Andreas Fault. From what you've been hearing and seeing, what are the telltale signs we should look for over the next few hours?
We should look for whether or not there was extensive damage to the north, which would be in the San Jose, Silicon Valley, Santa Cruz corridor. So far, the damage reports seem slight in that area, so it seems more likely that it was restricted to the south, which would be in the area of the Santa Cruz Mountains, which generally has a low population.
Well, that would be, if it turns out to have been there, we're going to rather awkwardly, I think, put in, as you look over scenes of people who were hurt. These are early videotape pictures from the San Francisco area. If you heard a rustle in the background, we were putting up a map we have of the seismicity of the state of California, 1808 to 1987. Now, Chris Scholes is going to come over. One reason we want to show you this is, of course, a map of the whole state of California, and each one of these dots is an earthquake above 3 on the Richter scale that's believed to have occurred since 1808 in California. Now, Professor Scholes, just roughly, San Francisco being here, Oakland being here, Santa Cruz down here, and San Jose here. The San Andreas Fault runs from where to where?
San Andreas Fault runs right up this trend, which you can see in the sort of low mountains that mark it, right up through this line of seismicity, right past San Jose, between San Jose and Santa Cruz, up to San Francisco Peninsula, and then on up to the north. The region that broke this evening appears to have been this region.
It's around Santa Cruz.
Around Santa Cruz, and probably in these remote mountains, the Santa Cruz Mountains in the south.
Thank you very much, Chris Scholes, and we recognize that that's not the ideal map on which to be doing that. We wanted to give you some sense of where this happened, and everybody talks about the San Andreas Fault, it being the major fault line in California. You can see from that map, actually, most of the earthquakes in California since 1808 have happened in the comparatively remote mountain area, somewhat south and east of Santa Cruz. On the telephone again now, we believe we have Tom Mullins of the California Office of Emergency Service. Mr. Mullins, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Dan.
What are the most important things for us to know at the moment, particularly as regards dead, injured, and destruction?
Well, right now, of course, we're concerned mainly with trying to help out those people who we can still help, those people who may be trapped in damaged buildings. What we're doing at the moment is mobilizing the various state resources that are available. We've sent quite a few strike teams composed of 5 fire engines apiece down into the area. We're in constant contact with local government, which is responding very well to this emergency. One fortunate thing in this terrible tragedy has been that our radio communications have been up, and we have been in contact with local governments in the area.
Mr. Mullins, you were speaking, perhaps you know this, over pictures of the fire in the marina area of San Francisco. Have you had very many reports of fires?
We've had reports of fires, but not as many as you might expect. We've had a number of different reports of gas leaks, which of course have the potential for turning into fire, but there have not been the extremely widespread fires that one might expect would happen in a situation like this.
Mr. Mullins, 2 aftershocks were reported. You of course, went through this. You felt the earthquake itself. Did you feel the 2 aftershocks?
I didn't feel the aftershocks myself. I'm about 90 miles away, but I certainly did feel the initial earthquake, and that's what alerted us first here in Sacramento.
Mr. Mullins, you mentioned that you and those who work with you are making an effort to determine if there are people trapped in buildings, collapsed buildings, and that sort of thing. Yeah. Do you have verified, confirmed reports of a number of buildings collapsed, or is it more scattered than a few?
I would characterize it as being more scattered. We, of course, depend on reports coming from the area, but the San Francisco Bay Area is very large. In a disaster of this size, it's really a regional disaster, and we're depending on reports from a lot of different kinds of entities. It's very, very difficult to put together an accurate picture of exactly what has happened, but that indeed is our task, and that's what we're doing right now so that we can make sure those scarce resources we do have get out to the people who really need them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mullins. We appreciate your help. The rolling earthquake along the notorious San Andreas Fault on the Richter scale, 7.0 at the epicenter, and it resulted in some of the damage you saw in those pictures in and around San Francisco, the last one being of a roadway in San Francisco where several sections of it collapsed. That was not Highway 880 in the Oakland area, where more than 40 people, according to the California Lieutenant Governor McCarthy, were killed on Highway 880. We don't have a picture of that as yet. Emphasize, as the Lieutenant Governor did, that all of those deaths on Highway 880 in the Oakland area are the ones confirmed were in individual automobiles, and no reports of any buses involved there. The earthquake did strike during the rush hour. The tonight's scheduled World Series game had to be canceled. San Francisco International Airport was closed because of tower damage, and the airport in Oakland also was closed. President Bush has already started to move as best he can to address what the federal government can do in this tragedy, as state and local government officials are also moving. Correspondent Mark Phillips is in Washington. Mark, what is it that the president and his men are doing?
Dan, the president was actually at a dinner this evening talking to Republican governors when the news of the earthquake first hit Washington. He did, when he finally got back to the White House this evening, have some comment on this, as I say, making this comment to reporters at the White House this evening.
And obviously the federal government will do everything that we possibly can to help, but at this point we're just assessing.
What President Bush has already begun to do is to authorize FEMA, the Emergency Measures Agency, to begin to take whatever measures it feels are necessary. Mostly at this point it's a question of monitoring just what the information is that comes in from California. FEMA is empowered to call on the military or any other agencies for that matter to bring aid where it is needed. It also might be worthy of mention that FEMA took some heat after Hurricane Hugo for not...
We will rejoin Dan Rather's CBS report in just a moment. First, we want to go to our Dan Adams, who is standing by live for us.
Dan?
All right, Dick and Jennifer, as I'm sure you're obvious, as the time goes on, the extent of this disaster is becoming more obvious all the time. You probably have already heard that the Lieutenant Governor has already announced that at least 40 people have been killed, though unconfirmed reports here put the death toll closer to 50. We have some videotape that we're going to be able to show you for the first time. We can go ahead and roll that tape. This is as the earthquake struck. The ticket takers here at Candlestick Park. Listen and watch. Obviously, some panic going on as some of the fans, there's one right there, actually that was a security guard trying to flee Candlestick Park as the earthquake hit. There were some injuries inside. In fact, we understand now that parts of the cement structure in the upper level did not collapse but crumbled, striking several of the fans, and another fan apparently suffered a heart attack. One of the pitchers there for the A's being escorted out, taking his wife, and many of the people that we saw here in tears as they were leaving the stadium tonight. We have an update for you on the Bay Bridge right now. Apparently it's going to be closed for days. San Mateo Bridge is also closed. Another fan there distraught over the situation here tonight. Let's come back live here now, and I want to show you what's behind me. Over here behind my shoulder, normally, and I can't move much here, but normally you'd be seeing the lights of Oakland and San Francisco. It's pitch black out there, except for the fact that you see a few headlights every now and then and the lights from some airplanes. The city is without electricity. Most of the Bay Area is without electricity. In fact, about the only place that I saw some lights was one little pocket down near Daly City. PG&E says they've lost some major transmission lines as well as some major substations here, so it's going to be some time before they get power restored here in the Bay Area. A radio report that I listened to a moment ago was from Oakland. There, an Oakland police officer was on the air and told people basically, you are on your own tonight. This is the type of disaster that the Bay Area has been planning for. There have been a number of drills. This is the real thing now, is people are on their own and they have to press into action all the drills, all the knowledge that they have right now about what to do in the event of a major earthquake. Somebody earlier said, well, is this the big one? Don't know the answer to that, but I'd say probably fairly safely that it looks like it. Dick?
Well, it still could be potentially bigger for the big one. Dan, we understand that some of the utilities are expected not to be back on for 72 hours or more.
That's probably fresher information than what I had earlier. As I mentioned, we did confirm through PG&E that major transmission facilities here in the Bay Area have been lost. Now, we have been able to watch some local television, but again, like us, they're on generator power, and they're about the only ones that are on the air as well as radio stations here. But as I look out over here, the parking lot is still emptying because of the gridlock in the Bay Area from freeways, although I can look out over and see traffic is moving on 101 right now. Basically, it's just pitch black out here.
Dan, are you still at Candlestick Park? Is that your location?
Yeah, I'm still at Candlestick Park right now. We decided to stay here and get as much stuff on the air from here as possible. In fact, you might be able to see part of the stadium over there through the trees. We decided to stay here because of the gridlock getting into other areas that we might be able to feed video from. So we're staying here, and as we get more pictures back in, that's where we'll feed from.
Yeah, and you said earlier that Dan Elliott has gone now into the city of San Francisco. Has he been able to return yet?
We have not been able to keep communications with Dan, again, because of the problems with all the lines down in this area. In fact, we haven't been able to get phones back to you folks for a while. We're waiting to hear from Dan as far as radio communication goes, but some of the reports that we saw on Bay Area television, which I know that you were carrying Channel 5 for a while, indicate that that area where Dan was headed, down to the Marina Green area, was heavily damaged and a number of fires burning there right now. In fact, we have confirmed that there were several fatalities in one of those fires, people trapped by the rubble of a collapsing building, then unfortunately burned to death in the fire. Also, we have also been told that a number of people were killed along Highway 880 this afternoon in the East Bay. That's when the upper level of the freeway collapsed onto a lower level right after rush hour started, and of course trapping a number of motorists in their vehicles.
So you and the television stations and the radio stations are able to continue transmissions because you're generating your own power, is that right?
That's right, and the lights that you see here at Candlestick right now are from generator power also. They have just enough electricity to light the exits, but it certainly is an eerie feeling walking in the perimeter of Candlestick Park. It's pitch black out here except for the lights from television crews like ours. Of course, with our live truck, we have generators. We have a satellite truck that we're transmitting from now, which has its own generator, and basically that's the extent of electricity here now.
Dan, we heard from one of the baseball players earlier who said, you know, they were all preparing for the World Series game, everybody excited about the game, and then the earthquake struck, and he said it really snapped things back into perspective of what's really important.
Yeah, the ball players, like somebody was saying earlier, most of the fans wait outside to see the ball players leaving their street clothes. They weren't in their street clothes tonight. They rushed out of here in uniform as quickly as possible. And as we saw you earlier, one of the players there quickly leaving with his wife. In fact, now there's some indication, we heard on one of the local radio reports here, that they may suspend actually the World Series from Candlestick here. And of course, if that would be the case, they might have to move it back to Oakland. But if the Coliseum's in as bad shape as Candlestick might be, of course, they might have to scrub it or they'd have to move it somewhere else. Of course, that has not been confirmed, and that's just one comment from one of the officials here at Candlestick.
A couple of other points, and don't leave us yet, Dan, but we do want to talk about some other things. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says there have been no reports of any damage of any of the 6 nuclear power reactors in California. A very low-level alert, I guess is what they call it, at the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant was issued, but again, no damage at any of the nuclear power plants.
Possible damage to a NASA tracking station that could impact the Shuttle Atlantis launch if it does in fact go tomorrow as they hope. We'll let you know more about that.
We had also
some sporadic reports of